The Halloween murder that no one believed was real, true, scary story. Everyone said poisoned Halloween candy was just a myth. Turns out, the real monster lived in our neighborhood, tucking his kids in at night and smiling like any good father. His name was Ronald O'Brien. We called him the Candy Man. I used to love Halloween. The smell of pumpkin guts on the porch, plastic skeletons rattling in the wind, kids sprinting through the neighborhood with pillowcases full of dreams and sugar. Before 1974, Halloween in Pasadena, Texas felt like Christmas dipped in orange paint and ghost stories. After 1974, it felt like death. I grew up 3 houses down from the O'Brien family. At the time, they just seemed like one more church-going, middle-class, button-down suburban American family. Dad, mom, 2 kids. Cute little house. A lawn that was always almost perfectly cut, like he wanted it perfect, but never had the discipline or pride to actually finish the job. Funny how small details make sense only in hindsight. Ronald was the kind of man who talked like every sentence needed an applause break. He was always performing. At church. At neighborhood gatherings. Like he wanted the world to clap for him just for existing. He worked different jobs, never for very long. Insurance, medical equipment, something at a bank. Always switching, always about to get a promotion. He had the kind of permanent smile where you couldn't tell if he was friendly or hiding something. I used to think he looked like a politician. Now, I think he looked like a snake trying to wear a human face. His children, though, sweetest kids you could meet. Timothy, 8 years old. Thin, happy, a giggle that made adults grin without knowing why. And Elizabeth, his little sister. They didn't deserve the monster they called Dad. It was raining just a little that night. You know that misty drizzle that feels like the world is exhaling cold breath? Kids were still out. We lived for Halloween. The O'Briens came by our place first. Ronald had that same fake kind smile glued on. Trick or treat, the kids shouted. And he gave this big theatrical laugh, like he was auditioning to be the star of a church Christmas play. Nothing seemed strange. Nothing ever does until it does. They went house to house. Kids ran ahead, parents shuffled behind with flashlights and coffee cups. I remember Ronald trailing the group slightly, holding the kids' candy bags tighter than necessary. Like the candy belonged to him. There's this part I still replay. The group stopped at a house. No one answered. Lights off. Most parents would say, "Okay, next house." Not Ronald. He lingered. He walked behind that house as if he was looking for someone. Then he came back holding 5 pixie sticks. He told everyone the homeowner must have dropped them in his hand through a cracked door. We believed him. Why wouldn't we? Those sugar sticks were gold to kids. You remember them, those long straws filled with colored sugar. The currency of childhood. He gave one to his son, one to his daughter, one to a neighbor's boy, one to another kid, and kept the last one. It all seemed so harmless. But evil rarely announces itself with a villain's cape and thunder. Sometimes it comes in paper tubes filled with candy dust. Later that night, I was at home sorting my own candy by worth trading value Snickers =, S tier, raisins =, punishment from God. Then we heard sirens. Loud, close, wrong. Sirens don't sound like Halloween. They sound like endings. My mom opened our door and the cold wind was pushing screams down the street. Real screams. Not fun screams. The kind of screams that scrape your soul. It was coming from the O'Brien's house. Timothy had eaten his pixie sticks. At first, he said it tasted bitter. Then his stomach cramped. He started vomiting, foaming, his little hands shaking. His dad held him, praying loudly, begging God to save him, crying like a man whose whole world was falling apart in his arms, except it was all a lie. And I still hate myself for thinking in that moment, poor man, he didn't deserve this. Timothy died in the hospital an hour later. An hour. That's all it took for a childhood to end in a holiday to rot. Everyone panicked. Parents dumped candy in the trash. Churches announced emergency prayer nights. Kids cried because trick-or-treat suddenly meant death. Police checked every piece of candy in the neighborhood. Every house on that street was searched. Every homeowner questioned. We all believed the same nightmare. Some psycho was poisoning children for fun. But then something didn't add up. Only one kid died. Only a few candies were actually poisoned. And all the poisoned ones came from Ronald. Then police discovered something else. A few months before Halloween, Ronald secretly took out large life insurance policies on both of his children. He was drowning in debt, behind on car payments, behind on house payments. Creditors calling. He was desperate. Desperate enough to kill his own son for a few tens of thousands of dollars. When detectives confronted him, he stuck to his story. Some stranger must have done it. But the stranger never existed. No mystery neighbor. No door that cracked open. No Halloween boogeyman. The killer was the father. The man who was holding his son while he died, pretending to pray, pretending to grieve, pretending to be human. They arrested him in front of the whole neighborhood. I remember watching him in handcuffs, walking stiff like a man who didn't know whether to cry or run. His wife looked like she had been shot through the soul. I will never forget that look. The courtroom was packed every day. People wanted to see the devil who used candy as a murder weapon. Ronald kept insisting he was innocent, kept performing. But evidence doesn't clap. Evidence doesn't care about your church voice or shiny shoes. Inside his home, they found scissors sticky with pixie stick sugar. They found the poison purchase trail. They found the insurance papers. He didn't fool anyone anymore. When he was sentenced to death, people cheered. On the day he was executed, crowds gathered outside chanting, "Trick or treat." Some even held bags of candy, like a sick joke to spit back at him. I was 12, that age where the world is supposed to still feel safe. After that Halloween, our parents x-rayed candy. Schools sent flyers home every fall. News stations still warn parents every year. Check your children's candy. Most people think it's a myth. I know it isn't. I watched that myth die on a cold Halloween night, foaming at the mouth in a little boy's arms. Evil didn't come from a stranger. It didn't lurk in the shadows. It didn't jump from the bushes in a mask. Evil tucked kids in at night, smiled at neighbors, read Bible verses in church. Sometimes the monster lives in your house. Sometimes he kisses you goodnight. Sometimes he hands you candy. And sometimes you eat it. I remember the funeral like a bad photograph. Blurry, too bright, almost unreal. Kids aren't supposed to bury kids. And parents, they're certainly not supposed to smile at their child's funeral. But Ronald O'Brien did. Not the whole time. Not obviously. But there were these tiny moments, like flickers, where I swear I saw satisfaction on his face. Like he thought he was performing some tragic role perfectly. I don't know if anyone else saw it. Adults were busy crying, comforting, trying to make sense of a senseless thing. But kids notice things adults don't. I remember staring at him and feeling wrong. Like his grief was a costume that didn't quite fit. And then there was his wife, Daneen. She looked hollow, like someone had scooped out her insides and left only fear behind. I didn't understand marriage back then. I didn't understand manipulation, emotional abuse, financial desperation, psychological control. I do now. And looking back, she looked like a woman who didn't know if she was going to walk out of that funeral alive. She never defended him, never tried to say he was innocent. She just existed, shattered and silent. After the funeral, our neighborhood changed in ways you could feel in your teeth. No more porch lights on Halloween. Parents didn't chat in driveways anymore. The laughter disappeared. Even summer felt colder. Everyone watched everyone else. Paranoia moved in like a new neighbor and never left. The Candyman did more than kill a boy. He killed trust. I remember kids whispering at school. His dad poisoned him. No, it was someone else. I heard his dad worship the devil. Kids invent monsters to make real ones easier to swallow. But adults weren't much better. Nobody said it, but everyone knew. If a father could kill his own child, then none of us were safe. This part lives rent-free in my head forever. After Timothy died, police came to every house that got candy that night. They collected bags, buckets, pillowcases, anything edible. Parents stood shaking, handing over candy like it was radioactive. And then came the tests. On local TV, they showed doctors cutting open candy and dripping chemicals on it to see if poison would react. Imagine watching adults in lab coats dissect candy. Like organs. Halloween turned into an autopsy. Nobody laughed. Nobody argued. Even now, decades later, families still take candy to hospitals to get x-rayed. Everyone thinks it's about stranger danger. False myth, right? Except it wasn't a myth here. Here, candy really did kill a child. And sometimes I wonder, if police hadn't acted fast, how many more kids would have died that night? Because there were 4 poison pixie sticks left. 4. 4 tiny tubes of sugar and cyanide. 4 more funerals waiting to happen. 4 more childhood bedrooms that could have turned into shrines. And the only reason those kids didn't eat them. One couldn't open the stapled top. Another fell asleep before trying it. A third kid's father said, "Not before dinner," and tossed it in a drawer. Tiny coincidences. Tiny threads that held their lives intact. When I think about it now, it makes my chest tighten. They didn't live because the world is safe. They lived because fate flipped a coin and they got lucky. It's strange what sticks in your mind. Some kids feared boogeymen after that. I feared bank statements and overdue bills. I feared cheerful smiles that felt too forced. I feared the sight of a parent holding a crying child, because now I knew that even love can be faked. I wasn't scared of masks anymore. Masks felt honest. What terrified me were faces. Normal ones. Human ones. Because Ronald O'Brien showed us the scariest truth a kid can learn. Sometimes the monster tucks you in at night. I would lie in bed and listen to my dad breathing in the next room, my mom walking down the hall, the refrigerator humming, familiar domestic sounds. And suddenly I'd panic. What if my parents could snap like that? What if any parent could? What if love isn't a shield? It's a horrifying question to put in a child's head. Why would a dad do that? You can't answer it without destroying innocence. So nobody answered. They just said, not every story has a reason, honey. But that wasn't true. Sometimes the reason is money. Sometimes the reason is ego. Sometimes the reason is because someone believes the world owes them more than it gave. And sometimes there is no why. Just darkness in human shape. When the trial ended and Ronald was sentenced to death, adults celebrated. There were chants, signs, people cheering outside the courthouse. I guess they needed to believe punishment equals closure. But kids don't think about justice like that. Kids want life to make sense. And nothing about this made sense, no matter how many handcuffs or verdicts you throw at it. Killing him didn't make Halloween safe again. Didn't bring Timothy back. Didn't erase the image of a boy foaming at the mouth on a holiday night. Ronald didn't die right away. Years passed. We all grew older. I stopped trick-or-treating earlier than I should have. Most of us did. I remember his execution day, though. On TV, they showed crowds outside chanting trick or treat. People laughed. Held candy bags like props. Turned a child's murder into theater. And I sat there thinking, monsters don't go away when you kill them. You just give them a legacy. Eventually, the O'Brien house went quiet. No laughter. No curtains moving. Just an empty building holding a ghost that wasn't a ghost. Kids dared each other to walk past it. Some swore they saw lights flicker inside. Others said you could still smell candy in the air. Ridiculous, right? But trauma has its own logic. Sometimes I'd walk by and swear I heard a boy laughing. Not scared, happy. Like nothing bad ever happened. And it made the silence worse. People say ghosts haunt places. I think grief does. I think betrayal does. I think innocence does. And that house still feels heavy even decades later. Like memory soaked into drywall. People always ask what happened to Elizabeth, the little sister who survived. She moved away with her mom. New name. New life. New identity. I hope she's okay. I hope the world was kinder to her than her father was. Sometimes I imagine her somewhere with kids of her own, telling them Halloween is fun and safe and magical. But then I remember she grew up knowing love can kill. And I wonder what that does to a soul long term. Some people think a single tragedy fades with time. Like trauma has an expiration date. It doesn't. It mutates. For me, it turned into habits. I never accept unwrapped candy. I always check expiration dates. I distrust forced smiles. I avoid overly cheerful men who need validation. I believe kindness without warmth hides something. And every Halloween, I feel this cold echo in my chest. Kids running, laughing, sugar high and joy drunk, and somewhere deep inside, a voice whispers. Not everyone who gives candy wants to make you smile. Sometimes they want to make sure you never smile again. People always ask the same thing when they hear this story. But he was the father. How could he? And the truth is terrifying. Most evil isn't supernatural. Most evil isn't dramatic. Most evil is disappointingly mundane. A man drowning in debt. A mind rotting from entitlement. A father who saw his children not as lives, but as numbers on an insurance form. It wasn't madness. It wasn't possession. It wasn't some Hollywood demon whispering in his ear. It was greed. It was ego. It was ego. And that's what still keeps me up sometimes. Monsters you can predict. Humans you can't. Before Halloween 1974, rumors about poisoned candy were urban legends. After Halloween 1974, they became warnings. On TV, in schools, whispered between mothers and grocery stores. To this day, every October articles pop up. Check your child's candy. Watch for tampering. Halloween candy poisonings are a myth. Except they aren't a myth where I'm from. It happened here. It happened on our street. It happened to a boy I knew. And even now, even as an adult, When someone hands my kid candy on Halloween, for just 1 second I see a paper straw filled with sugar and cyanide, and it chills me. We don't fear ghosts in my neighborhood. We fear pixie sticks. Years later, they tore down the O'Brien house. Too many people drove by slow. Too many kids dared each other to touch the mailbox. Too many memories clung to the walls like mildew. Now there's a different house there. Porches, flowers, trimmed hedges. A family barbecues on summer evenings, their kids ride scooters in the driveway. I don't blame them. They didn't live the history. They didn't feel the crack in the world when a father murdered his son over candy and cash. But every Halloween, when I pass by, I see the old version in my head, dark windows, rotting lawn, a hollow house holding a dead child's shadow. Places remember, even when people try to forget. Daneen remarried. New town, new life, new name. People always want to know if she forgave him. I don't think forgiveness is the right word when your husband murders your child. I think it's survival. You don't move on. You relocate the memories into a room inside you and lock the door. You pray it stays shut. Sometimes I imagine her now, older, somewhere quiet, watching grandkids laugh and hoping Halloween is just fun for them. Hoping they never learn what she learned. That family isn't always safety. That a wedding ring isn't always a promise. That sometimes the person who swears to protect you is sharpening the knife. Every generation in our area grows up hearing the story. Not from textbooks, kids whisper it on playgrounds. Like Bloody Mary. Like Slender Man. Except this thing was real. Some stories haunt because they're too wild to believe. This one haunts because it's too normal. No haunted house. No masked killer. No curse. Just a man with a smile, a Bible, and poison in his pocket. The scariest things are always the ones that look safe first. I'm old enough now that people assume I'm over it. You don't get over watching innocents die. You don't move on from a holiday turning into a funeral. You don't forget a little boy foaming at the mouth while his father pretended to pray. But I am telling this now because monsters evolve. And the scariest ones aren't wearing masks. They wear ties. They shake your hand. They smile too much. They talk like they're reading from a script of how good people talk. They stand in line behind you at church. They read bedtime stories. They ask kids, what candy do you want? And if you're not careful, you only realize what they are after something breaks. Often too late. Every Halloween, my porch light goes on. Yes, it still goes on. I hand out candy. I smile at kids in costumes. I tell them they look cool. Superheroes, witches, zombies. But inside, I'm scanning every parent's face. Looking for the one smile that feels glued on. Looking for that offbeat enthusiasm, that spiritual vacancy behind the eyes. The mask Ronald wore wasn't on Halloween. He wore it every day. I don't want you to be scared of Halloween. Kids deserve magic. Kids deserve imagination and joy and pillowcases full of sugar highs. But I want you to understand something adults often forget. Evil doesn't always look evil. Evil can be tidy. Evil can be polite. Evil can have a Bible verse on its tongue and a Halloween bucket in its hand. So check the candy. Not because strangers are monsters. Most strangers aren't. Check because sometimes the monster tucks kids in and says grace before dinner. And because I never want another kid to scream like Timothy screamed. And because Halloween should be spooky, but only pretend spooky. Let monsters stay in costumes. Let children stay children. Let candy stay sweet. When I see kids run door to door now, laughter echoing like it's brighter than the streetlights, I smile too. Because they don't know. They shouldn't know. But sometimes, beneath that smile, a quiet voice says, may your boogeymen stay imaginary. And that is my Halloween prayer every year. For them. For all of us. For the boy we lost to a father who thought money mattered more than love.